so I had a few models, but very, very remote, very, very far away. Nothing close, nothing that I could relate to here or nearby. In terms of the family and relatives, of course, they were very scared of the concept itself. They didn't understand it much. They thought that this would be something very risky, and it looked like something that was not, how should I say, appropriate to do at the time. So I did it against them in a way. Eventually, in the long term, they were happy with my choice, with my options. But at the time, they were quite upset, I have to say. And I was fortunate that during university, I came together with a couple of my colleagues from the same year, from the same class, but we weren't able to start anything through university, but then we reunited after university and created this three co-founder entrepreneurship. So basically, we were three co-founders in this first company, which was great because it meant that we had combined resources, combined abilities. One of us was more into the technical part of things, sort of a technical guru. The rest of us, a couple of me and another co-founder, were more on the let's say commercial, marketing and operational side of the business, and this actually helped a lot. But I have to say that before going into entrepreneurship, I also had an attempt of being employed in a company. I started as a business English professor, teacher in a Romanian high school, of all jobs that I could have, and that was extraordinary for me as an experience. Sharing information and helping younger generation to learn the language, but maybe more than that. But then it did not look like a good career path in terms of the salaries, in terms of the opportunities. So I said, no, this would be something just, let's try to find something better. And the better thing that came was that I got employed by the electricity network of Romania, the state-owned RENEL, and I was employed as a control devices engineer, well-paid job, good hours and good program. But again, I realized probably 2 days in that it was really something that gave me no opportunity to grow and to make a career. And that was very clear for me when maybe a week after getting employed, I had this first conversation, more, how should I say, structured conversation with my boss, who was 25 older than me. So I was 23, 24. He was almost 50. And he was completely, complacent and having not achieved anything really in life at 50 years. So I said, if at 50 I would be in his shoes, because I would probably follow this career path, and when he goes to retirement, I would take his place. I would consider myself as really having wasted my life, professionally speaking. So from that moment on, I was very active in trying to find ways to get away in a different scenario, in a different context, and with different opportunities. And of course, little by little, I realized, my colleagues also realized, that this idea that we could actually open our own business is probably the best one, and we did it. And then things went very well from the beginning. I have to say, I was not that kind of entrepreneur who initially failed and then succeeded. I had this luck to succeed in the first attempt. Probably if I hadn't, I would have tried again and again. But we were lucky enough to succeed from the first time. Probably the moment was right, the product was right, the market was emerging and offering opportunities. Not a lot of strong competition, and we obviously maybe on the first place in terms of reasons to succeed, the team itself, because it was that kind of textbook team with 3 co-founders and all of us very involved, all of us fully committed, because we were very young. We didn't have any other obligations or commitments, and so we just committed to this one. Of course, as soon as we established this as a business, I quit from my job, and that was sort of even more aggravating for my parents, because I had this secure job with a good salary, with a lot of bonuses for Easter, for Christmas, for holidays, and in Bucharest, in the capital, and I just gave it up just like that for something that looked at the time very, very risky and very reckless in a way for me as being a young graduate of the Bucharest Polytechnical University.
Do you remember how long did you stay working for RENEL?
Yeah, of course. It was a full year. Well, actually, almost a year. I think it was right around the new year that I started, and it was right before the end of the year, before Christmas, that I quit. I even lost the Christmas bonus like that. But again, on the one hand, I felt that, and this is a discussion that I have with a lot of entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, because they tend to stick with what they have in terms of a daytime job, and then they ask themselves why the business that they are establishing and trying to develop is not picking up. Of course, for me, entrepreneurship cannot be done part-time. You have to either do it full-time, or then it's maybe a hobby, maybe a pet project, but it will never really go into scale. It will never really go into a real successful large business if you don't commit 100%. Of course, committing 100% means that you're taking the risk, that you're waiving the benefits of having this maybe good employment, good job. And this is a typical situation now. It was not so much in the 90s, but it's a typical situation now with corporate managers trying to do something like a real entrepreneurial startup, but again, forgetting to understand, or not succeeding to understand that this is really a full-time job and a full-time commitment, or should be.
It seems like you needed or wanted a challenge, not just a cushy job somewhere working for the Romanian state, state-owned company.
Yeah, well, in the 90s, the companies were either state-owned companies or just small boutique entrepreneurships, like mini markets and video rental stores. So there was nothing big in terms of private business in Romania in the 90s, at least in the beginning of the 90s. Then some multinationals started to come. First, they came a bit sort of careful and reluctant, but then they started to get more interested in the market, because it was an emergent and growing market. And by that time, you could already think about employment into one of these private companies in different in a different context and with different career opportunities. And we see some of those employees having stepped up the ladder and becoming heads of such multinationals today in Romania, and that's admirable. In terms of the risks and the challenge that I took at the time, I consider that as a relatively small challenge, because actually, the question is, when you are 20-something and you're just out of university and you don't have any mortgage, you don't have kids, you don't have wife and family, you don't have other types of bank loans or other obligations, what would be the greatest risk that you're facing when you start such a challenge as a full-time, full head-on entrepreneurial activity? The greatest risk is that you'll fail, right? So in that sense, you can fail, and then failure implies a lot of learning coming from that, because you learn a lot more from your mistakes than from the things that went good in your life, that went well in your life. So basically, you can consider it a great learning experience. And conversely, what's the downside in terms of finances or other things? You just lost whatever you had, which was not much to start with. So at that point, I think we took some risks, but it was not such a huge risk. However, along the way of growing the business, all of us, the founders, were always committed to the extent that we would put our own property, if we had something, like a car or a house or something, we would put it as collateral for a bank loan, because we knew that we needed the working capital to grow the business. So that was unquestionable at any point in time. And indeed, if you want to avoid that risk, then it's really a question of how much you wanna be involved. Do you want to be involved all in, or just have a partial involvement? And with partial involvement usually also come partial results, rather than the full benefits of becoming a successful entrepreneur, which is indeed sometimes more of a social thing than a financial reward.
But please tell us a bit about how was it like during the 90s to be an entrepreneur in retail? We have examples now and we see what's happening now, but how was it then? I'm trying to understand also the economic context at that time and the environment. How was it for you to develop a business in the economy back then?
Yeah, looking back, it was actually crazy, and it was actually, it would seem impossible to navigate it today, because of course there were some good things, some advantages of doing something like that back then, and I will talk about them at the end. But first, let's mention all those crazy things that you had to navigate. The legal and legislative environment, which was, even though we're complaining now about things not being predictable in the legislation and fiscal rulings and measures changing all the time, but what we see now is very calm and very predictable compared to what happened in the 90s. Things were really changing overnight in the 90s, and not necessarily in the good sense. We were part of that generation of entrepreneurs starting a business right before the 1996 economic crash of Romania. 1996 to 2000 was the period when Romania really went down, like very abruptly in terms of GDP, in terms of economy in general. So we went through that downfall, and we had to navigate somehow. This also implied a lot of things related to inflation, hyperinflation, currency, the problem of even getting hard currency to buy the computers that we would then sell in the market. In a matter of weeks, I think it was January 1997 or 1998. So during that month of January, I think the exchange rate went from 3,000 to 9,000, something like that. So basically something incredible in terms of what we see now for the forex markets. So we had to navigate all those things. Additionally, there was little expertise in terms of management. You could not find people who were already trained in similar businesses. So what we had to do in Flamingo was to really create some sort of an in-house school and people development program early on, which actually worked very well, because at the top of the company's activity, I think we were about 500 people from something like 8 countries with 8 different languages. And I would say that 90% of them today are entrepreneurs in their own right, successful entrepreneurs, consultants, business consultants, managers in larger Romanian companies and multinationals. So this kind of of people that resulted from that informal school. And we had to do that because there was no way to get people, Romanian people, already trained and having the seniority or the expertise for that. Even if we maybe wanted to pay them hefty salaries, we couldn't find such professionals in the 90s. And the other thing that was crazy at the time was, and this is something that people from the younger generations cannot possibly understand, is that it was so much more expensive to do business at the time. Almost everything was much more expensive. If we're talking about infrastructure, about internet, about telecom, you'd pay thousands of dollars at the time. Euro was not a currency yet. You'd pay thousands of dollars a month for something that now you can provide for your business with 50 euros a month. All the internet, all the telephone numbers. No mobile phones at the time. As the manager of this young and flourishing company, I had my first NMT phone, a big Nokia phone, 1994. But it was so expensive first, and it had very poor signal in most places, and I didn't have anybody to call, and so it was almost like a status symbol rather than a useful thing. And so technology was very complicated to get by. As now it's very easy, and it was so much more expensive to just own or to use. There were no options for software as a service, for instance. So everything we had to use a lot of software and a lot of tools in our company. Everything was very expensive. From the typical Microsoft Office and other products, which were way more expensive than the computers themselves were thousands of dollars for something that you buy now. The average computer that would be $500 or $400 or euros, whatever. So basically, if you look at that, it's clear that there has been no time in human history when business can be done so cheaply, let's say, in the sense of the cost that you incur. And of course, people will say, okay, what about the wages? Wages were much lower then. The difference is now we are also talking so much, and some of us even are successful in outsourcing a lot of the typical functions and services of a business. And then with outsourcing, you're getting to variable cost, and also you're getting to lower cost because you only pay for what you really use. Whereas in the old days, in the 90s, for instance, even if we didn't want to, we needed to create a complete fleet of vans and trucks with their own drivers and a fleet manager, and it was a nightmare to handle that because we did not want to enter this business in order to have vans and trucks and drivers. But in the 1990s, you didn't have any good, reliable courier providers, logistics providers, forwarders, and so on and so forth. Or Romania was not necessarily on their map at the time. So everybody needed to do that in-house rather than like everybody is outsourcing that now to the professionals, and they get obviously a better cost, and they're getting rid of all the hassle of dealing with something that is not fundamental, is not core to your business. Now we can finally focus on the core values and competencies and advantages of our business rather than doing everything in-house. We had fleet and drivers. We had technical people for anything. We had legal people. We have accounting people inside the company. So all these things were difficult to outsource and to get as a service back then. And it's getting easier and easier with everything now to get as a service now.
Would you start at this point in time a venture like Flamingo Computer was back then? Would you still start it?
Well, if you're asking about the business model itself, of course not, because that kind of business would have no added value today. The business, the society has moved from the value of consultative selling that we were doing, because buying a computer in the 90s was like going to some guru of the tech world in our store, and then our guys would tell you, okay, this graphic card is not compatible with this motherboard, and if you want this kind of performance, you need this kind of RAM memory and this kind of hard disk drive, and we can recommend this and that. This is something that no consumer could do back home, because if they could do that back home, they would not need us. So basically, this was then. Now everything is coming as a box, and people know a lot more and have a lot more information about both the technical specification and the benefits that they can get from a certain product, be it a computer or a phone or a tablet or whatever type of tech product or peripheral. So I wouldn't start the same business, because the same model could not work today. And this is typical for so many businesses. I mean, even the likes of Microsoft or Apple or Dell would not start the same type of business today, because that model has been pyramided and is not working anymore. I would certainly start a similar concept, in the sense of starting with a team, so not alone, but probably the same Trinity concept that works very well in entrepreneurship, as in life in general. Gives stability, it gives complementarity, it gives a lot of advantages, provided, and that's very important, provided that the values of the founding team are similar. So basically, with shared values, you can build a great team. If the values are not similar, then don't even start the venture together with other people. So we start from the values. Then we need to see that we have complementarity in terms of abilities, in terms of skill, in terms of experience, in terms of resources, of course. Pooling resources from a number of founders is also very important. Then I would start the same thing as a business, in the sense of trying to find the intersection of an emerging market, so something that is not yet really big and saturated, but starts to emerge. Potentially not a full mainstream market, but a niche of that market that is becoming emergent. For instance, back in the day when we started Flamingo Computers, there was already a number of companies offering computers for the corporates, mainly for state-owned companies. And we didn't want to do that. Of course, to some extent, we believe this must have had to do with some corruption and bribes and things like that. And it did, as we saw later on in famed lawsuits and corruption charges in Romania and in other countries. So we didn't want to have to do that. But we saw this domestic household family market for computers emerging, and there was not a lot of offer for them, because those computers that was sold to the corporates were much more expensive. So we came with this clone that was not our concept. We've seen it with other companies in various parts of the world. So basically not a branded computer, but something that we assembled from parts, and thus made it more affordable for the household market, and also addressing to a market that was still relatively small, but growing at a fast pace. So that would be the definition of an emerging market, or an emerging niche in some cases. So I would still look at something like that, where there is not too much competition, and where we can actually mobilize or manage the type of financial resources and capital required to develop that business, because that's also very important. A lot of young entrepreneurs are coming to me with fabulous projects. They haven't done anything before, and now they want to do this 10 million euro project, and I'm asking, how are you going to finance it? Even if somebody comes with 500,000 or 1 million as a venture capital seed or pre-seed money, and they say, okay, we'll go to the bank, we'll go to the guarantee fund, we'll go to European funds, and then we put together all these resources. And that's not working, because if you don't have skin in the game, if you don't have your own capital, you cannot leverage that with debt, with any debt. So basically, the other very important thing that I would consider when opening a business now is what kind of capital and financial resources in general I can mobilize, and related to what is needed for the company to really grow. Because you have companies, you have businesses, business models which are very dependent on capital, particularly in working capital. Our first business, funnily enough, was very dependent on working capital, but we turned it around saying, okay, if it is dependent on working capital, how can we reverse the situation and get into a negative working capital position where basically we'll always, getting money from the client sooner than what we pay to the suppliers. And we found a very good way to doing that because, for instance, anecdotally, I would go to, various suppliers in Bucharest for hard disk drives, for motherboards, for graphic cards, and I would get one of each or two of each, just, using my own personal, let's say, worthiness towards the sellers and not paying upfront, but saying, okay, I'll pay you tomorrow. And through the day, we would assemble the computers, sell the computers to the consumers, and the consumers would pay immediately. Of course, we pay cash at that time. There was not a lot of money moving through the banks in the early 90s. So they would come, pay cash, and then we would go next morning and pay for the parts, computer parts that we had bought, and buy new ones with a promise that we'll pay next day. So basically, this kind of rolling the working capital needs helped us to basically grow as much as we could without being pressed by the financial requirements. Contrary to that, I see many companies where they give a lot of payment terms to the clients. They pay early to the suppliers, and then eventually they get into a cash crunch, and they come to me and they say, Marius, we're growing very well, but the more we grow, the more cash we need actually instead of producing more cash. And this is a working capital equation that they don't manage correctly. This being said, of course, there are a lot of business models which do not require a lot of capital. For instance, consultancy, but you need to have some experience before starting a consulting business. And again, a lot of young people say, I want to become a consultant. And I say, okay, it doesn't work like that. You need to, put 10 years, maybe 20 years into real business and then come and say, okay, I have this experience. I can share some of that experience with you as a consultant. Or the various service businesses that also do not require capital. So I would consider these parameters in terms of team, financial needs, status of the current market to be emergent, and status of the current competition not to be what they now call a red ocean. So not to have way too much competition around me, because that will be difficult to deal with.
One final question to end the Flamingo Computers chapter in your professional life. Tell us one or two lessons that you learned while building the company that are still useful to you today, and you're still building your professional life based on them, and giving advice to young entrepreneurs based on what you've learned.
Yeah, well, there were so many lessons that I've learned, that we've learned during the fabulous ride with Flamingo Computers from 1994 to 2000. Probably one very interesting learning was that we were very lucky to prepare a business plan, to make business planning early on. And because a lot of entrepreneurs say, okay, what's the use of business plans when eventually, of course, no business plan, no plan really goes according to reality. There's going to be always differences, big or small. But I think it's important, and it's not only important for us internally because we want to have some sort of guidance, some sort of benchmark, some sort of measure, monitoring of what we're doing, where we're going, but it's also very important for the outside world. For us, for instance, we were the only company going to big vendors, to large brands from the IT world, from Romania with a business plan in the 90s, and one of these guys even told me, in a computer trade fair, I was there, asking for a meeting. We got the meeting. I presented the business plan. It was nicely printed. At the time, digital was still there were some floppy disks, but normally people would just present things printed, and they seemed impressed. And then the manager of that international export division of the company told me, Marius, that's great. We think we want to sign a distribution contract with you. We had no less than 10 other Romanian companies, discussing with us through the fair, but you are the first ones with a business plan. And we also believe that your business plan is a good one, is a sound one. So that's one major learning, that sometimes, things that you do, like business planning, like really, trying to not only to have the vision, but also to strategize and put that strategy into a business plan and then follow that business plan, can be very helpful in ways that you don't even understand initially. Another important learning lesson was that, and that's something that I would recommend, and I often recommend to all entrepreneurs, is that I felt very much in the dark and confused until I was able to understand a profit and loss report, a balance sheet, these basic cash flow projection, these basic reporting tools and formats, financial formats for a company, which typically in most entrepreneurial companies are not maintained, other than the ones that we are compelled to, we need to submit to the fiscal authorities, but those are not the most useful for entrepreneurs. But until you don't understand those ones and the management reports, you are really in the dark with respect to your business. For me, it was like enlightenment when I realized that just looking at some numbers that are put there, in a formal way for the fiscal institutions, I can get so much insight, so much information about my own company and about our other companies, of course, in terms of what we are investing now in. We need to, and we want to look at those numbers and to make sure that those numbers are the right numbers. So we confirm those numbers with financial consultants through due diligence and so on and so forth. So this is the second major learning, considering that a lot of the entrepreneurs say, okay, the balance sheet, the profit and loss, these things, the things that we submit to the fiscal authorities, this is for the accountant, this is not for me, I'm doing business. And in reality, business is so much actually in those numbers, much more than anything else, because those numbers are a reflection of what we've done in sales, what we've done in marketing, what we've done in development of our product, what we've done in expansion, market expansion, what we've done in logistics and other things.
Please walk us through your other business ventures. You also had Testarossa coffee chain, feed distribution. At some point, you've entered, you've bought PC Garage. You've had a lot more after Flamingo Computers. You had other business ventures. Walk us through them in short. And I don't know, were you more thrilled about the idea of starting and building something up to a certain point than selling or leaving someone else to manage it?
Well, I am a serial entrepreneur. There is another profession that is described as serial, but that's not a very good one, serial killer. Serial entrepreneur is somebody who develops businesses sequentially and then makes exits and then goes to the next business. It's very important for me to send this message that entrepreneurship cannot be done in parallel. So like in physics, you have things that work in parallel and things that work sequentially in a series. Entrepreneurship has to go sequentially. You cannot do 2-3 entrepreneurial businesses in parallel, simply because, as I said before, there needs to be full commitment. So you cannot be fully committed in multiple businesses. Contrary to that, as an investor, you have the obligation to invest in parallel, because if you only invest in one company, you're not an investor, or you're not a good investor, or wise investor, because investing in just in one company means that you have all the disadvantages because you don't have any control. Somebody else is doing the business. You take all the risk in one asset, and only if you're really, really lucky, then you'll make some money as an investor. But if you consider you're really lucky, you should probably better try the lottery. So an investor always needs to invest in a diversified portfolio, which means that it needs to invest in a number of companies, in potentially different types of assets, not only very risky ones, but also less risky assets. So to balance one's potential of returns with the risks that are taken for various assets. For an entrepreneur, it's just one company. And for me, it was this concept that, we're growing a business, but businesses, just like humans, and like many things in life, are working in cycles. So basically, one thing that I learned, and this was proven over and over by the crisis that we had in Romania, for instance. We already had 3-4 crises in the past 30 years, and looking at those crises, I saw a lot of entrepreneurs having their entire value creation for some of them for a lifetime, for some of them for 10 years, for 15 years, being brought to nothing. They went bankrupt during the crisis, or being brought to a very small amount, and then they had to recover, and it took them another 5 or 7 or even 10 years to come back to the position that they were in before the crisis, in terms of NAV, in terms of their net asset value. So on that thought, and also considering that all of the companies go through these cycles in various ways. For instance, an exit from a company does not mean that the company ends its lifetime. In the case of Flamingo, eventually the company went IPO, so it was the first successful IPO of an IT distribution company on the Bucharest Stock Exchange. I don't even remember, it was 50-60 million as valuation, so something great that the company has achieved. So it does not mean that an exit means the end of the company. It just means that the company should enter the next stage. Or because you mentioned PC Garage is today a great company, and very profitable, and very focused on its niche of gaming and tech savvy consumers and clients. And the fact that we've done the exit a few years back doesn't mean that the company has lost its value. Contrary to that, it has increased the value, being part of the large and Asper ZMAG group now. I think actually it has increased a lot in value. And so with this in mind, it so happened more often than not that I was actually looking to create value, to help creating value in companies as an entrepreneur, as I do now as an investor, but with an end goal of achieving some kind of exit, be it listing the company publicly in a stock exchange, which we did in some cases, be it selling to a larger strategic company from the same profile, which we also did, be it selling it or substantially most of the shares, the majority of the shares, to larger financial investors, which can then also take the company to the next level, or integrate that company into a consolidated story, and then maybe go public with a consolidated group of companies from the same area. So there are many ways to think about an exit, and I've thought about them all. There's always succession as an exit, but succession to family means that your children would first have to really like what you're doing, which doesn't happen all the time, and B, also be adequate, be the right people for taking the company to the next stage and to the next level within the next generation. So that's not, it is one of the options, and we see many family companies going from the generation, not in Romania yet, but it will come, but in Western countries, in the US, in other more developed entrepreneurial ecosystems, we see that from generation, and that's also a way of exiting a company. So to some extent, every entrepreneur has an obligation to think about the exit, because in one way or another, they will exit the business, even though it's maybe an exit because of old age, because of death or hazard accidents. They get incapacitated and they cannot work. Or in the good situation, they get bored and they say, okay, I want to go to an exotic island rather than spend time here. And for this, I need to sell my business. So that's your exit for what I understood of it. So going quickly through the story, starting by saying that I'm now up to date, I've been involved over time in almost 40 companies. So a lot of a lot of companies, if for just one person, but the most part of it, in terms of the numbers of companies I've been involved as an investor rather than entrepreneur. And this is the period when I've done business angel investments, and now more recently, which is 10 years already, venture capital investments and this kind of equity investments that we do in companies. And there have been 16, 17 companies in this venture capital alone. And as a business angel, I also invested in probably a dozen companies, so some 30 companies already from this type of investment as venture investments, because also business angel is a type of venture investment. In terms of entrepreneurial activities, of course, after Flamingo, there was Flanco, another big success where we grew the company sixfold in 3 years, from 20 million euro to 120 million euro, from 275 employees to 1,500 employees, from a relatively small network of chain of shops in terms of size of shops and number of shops to a very large chain, and to being the leader of the Romanian distribution of electronics and home appliances back in 2003, 2004. And by that time, I made my second exit. The company was already substantially owned by private equities and venture capital investors. So it was already my first experience to work with this kind of financial investors, and we had a very good cooperation, and we've done great things together. And then Fit Distribution, which has done a lot of distribution of IT products during the late 90s and early 2000s, and also was the sort of vehicle, the substance of the acquisition of PC Garage, which was, I consider it a business angel investment of mine. But I also invested in other areas, and I was involved in other companies. This for me was the privilege that probably not very many entrepreneurs have, to be exposed to be involved in multiple business verticals, because a lot of the entrepreneurs, of course, for a good reason, stay in one sector, in one vertical for a very long time. They specialize there, which is great. But for me, it was the opposite of great. It was great. The opposite was great because I was able, not to stay in just one vertical, but to, I guess, I am always curious to learn new things about business and about various businesses. So I was involved in distribution, in logistics, in media, in production. One of my investments, Viking Profile, one of the important players in the metallic roof tile production in Romania. We've also done a very good exit just before the crisis in 2008, selling the company to the largest manufacturer from Poland of the same type of products, Pruszynski, and now Viking Pruszynski is the brand that they use in Romania, and it's still one of the important players on the Romanian market, on the Romanian relevant market. So I had this chance to be able to understand, or at least to try to understand multiple verticals. And I understood, I hope I understood a few things. One is that, of course, every business vertical has its key performance indicator, its rules, its specificity, its particulars. But conversely, I discovered that business principles, business theory can actually apply from one company to another without any problems. Moreover, and this is fabulous, and I'm trying to use that, sometimes we don't succeed enough because people are entrenched in their own understanding of things. Because if you've been in something for your whole life, there is this, tunnel effect where you just see in front of you. You have blind spots left and right, and if somebody tells you, okay, why don't we do it differently? The natural response is because we've always done it like that, right? So I had this advantage of coming from various places and going into various companies and telling them, hey guys, I've seen that done in another company. It's not in your sector, but it works. Maybe it works for you too. And in many cases, we've succeeded to sort of not reinvent the wheel, but apply some best practices from other areas that they would have no way to apply. And this is something that, if you look at the greatest companies of the world, this is what they've done. They've taken, insights and best practices from other areas, like Google, combining the existing, let's say, theory about search, and how to go about, the search engine for the web, and then sort of ranking pages according to various criteria, which is something that was taken from Stanford University, from their academic, let's say, way of doing things for hundreds of years. So it was not something that was technology related. And many such examples where good companies have taken inspiration from other verticals and from other businesses. And this is, for me, this is great because again, I think I can help a bit more than somebody who just knows one particular field. However, and I want to also mention that there is value, and we believe as an investor, there is value in specialization, in being more vertically specialized, because as you are getting more vertically specialized, you know how to address the needs, particularly on the client base. You know how to address the specific needs of certain clients, because some companies say, okay, we'll do everything for everybody, but it doesn't always work like that, or in most cases it doesn't work like that. You need to have specialized solutions for specialized industries, for instance. It's one thing to serve, I don't know, if we're talking about enterprise software, it's one thing to serve the banking sector, and it's another thing to serve the pharma or the telco sector. So you need to find the right solutions. In some cases, we see companies that really specialize so much that they say, okay, we do this only for this sector, and we are the specialists in this sector. And of course, it also helps in terms of dealing with competition, because as you get more specialized, you're in a more thin layer of competitors, thinner and thinner, until if you're really specialized very, very vertically, you might be the only player or one of the couple of players that can offer the product for those customers. So I also believe in the values of being vertically specialized as a company, and that implies to really focus more and more every year in the same direction rather than spreading everywhere.
I'm glad that you mentioned at some point one of your first encounters with the venture capital world, because I want to go to this stage in your professional life, and I was going to ask you if you still remember when you first heard about this concept of startups and of angel investing and then venture capital. The story behind, I want to find out the story behind your road up to getting to 3TS, Catalyst as it's called now, and the venture capital investments that you've made, and your decision to help businesses and startup founders now from this role, this perspective.
Yeah. Well, it starts, or it goes and it converges from two directions really. One was the business as an entrepreneur. Even back in the day at Flamingo, we were already considering using venture capital or private equity rather money in the early 2000s. But then we realized that probably the better idea in terms of the returns would be for the company to go straight towards the public markets, towards the stock exchange. So already at the time, I wanted to study more and to understand more. And then in the second company in Flamingo, as I said, I worked with Oresa Ventures, for instance, very established investment company, private equity type investor with many investments in Romania and the region, many successful investments. And I learned more about how they do things, why they do the investments the way they do them. And this was, sort of a learning curve. That was a very long learning curve for me, because it took another almost 10 years until I really went into the venture capital world, because in between, as doing a few successful exits as an entrepreneur made me think, okay, the next step could be for me to invest from my own capital that I've achieved by making successful exits into a number of companies, into a portfolio of companies. And this was the time with the Lions Arena, the first business show on the Romanian television, and it created a bit more visibility for the concept itself of business angel investments. It created a bit of awareness for entrepreneurs that it's not just, let's go to the bank when we can, show some results, but it's like, okay, we can attract some form of risk capital from people or from institutions which are able to come and to offer that kind of equity, that kind of investment. And as a business angel, I've invested in 10, 12 companies in various sectors and in various stages, very diverse. And over time, I was starting to understand, once again, a bit better this idea that, okay, it's good to be exposed in various fields and in various verticals, but it's also probably better as an investor to also come back to a more structured approach, to a more vertical approach. And of course, for me, that was always the IT, the technology, let's say. So I was trying to see, okay, how can I get into this ecosystem? And it was the time when the first VC fund in Romania was established, Catalyst Romania Fund 1. And by that time, of course, the market was small, the knowledge was very low, the pipeline was low and not very promising. So it was a challenge for 3DS Capital to manage that together with the Romanian team. And they basically called on me and they said, Marius, we know what you've been doing as an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, business angel. We would need a hand with, getting this fund up. And I said, because I actually wanted to get involved, and I said, yes, I'm interested. A few things contributed to that. My good friend Radu Georgescu was one of the early investors in Catalyst Romania Fund 1. Also, his company, Avangate, had been invested by 3TS Capital. Then together with 3TS Capital, he made a very successful exit with Avangate to Francisco Partners in the Silicon Valley. So one of the very successful IT stories from Romania early on. So Radu also said, Marius, I think this would be something for you. And then I said, okay, let's see how it looks. And I initially joined as an advisor for 3DS Capital. And then I joined them as a partner. And for a number of years, I'm managing partner of Catalyst Romania. And we have already the second fund, the second generation fund. So this is how things, really came together. And there was another angle that converged to this, which was the educational perspective, because also, and when I started the Alliance Arena, there were a number of people coming to me and saying, Marius, there is so much need of entrepreneurial education in Romania. Maybe you can give a hand or help in some way. And I thought of some things, as I was, at the time, I was also an associate professor with EMBA schools like CU Business School and then Maastricht School of Management. And I was teaching entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, innovation, and new business ventures. So those were my three pieces of syllabus of curriculum that I was teaching there. And I was thinking, okay, how to help entrepreneurs. And I had the syllabus, I had the support of the lecture, of the course itself. And it was obviously for EMBA purposes, it was in English. And then I said, what if I started to put down a book on entrepreneurship, which would be for everybody? It would not require anything like, financial studies or any prerequisites like we had in the EMBA. It would be for everybody, and maybe it helps existing entrepreneurs, but also budding or wannabe entrepreneurs. And I wrote the book. That was back in 2011, and it was quite a success. I didn't really expected that kind of readership, and it was probably because at the time it was the first piece in Romanian and with Romanian context about entrepreneurship, and it was like A to Z guide, from idea to analyzing the opportunity, feasibility studies, moving on to the startup itself, and then managing the startup, managing the challenges, financial, human, marketing challenges of a startup, and then going towards exit strategies, investment strategies, and so on. So it was a sort of full A to Z guide to entrepreneurship. And with the book out, again, a lot of people said, okay, this and similar information could be even taught as courses and seminars and things like that. And I started some long ago. I started to organize various types of courses and programs for entrepreneurs. I have now a number of such programs. One is an intensive course on entrepreneurship. One is a course on financing one's entrepreneurial business with equity investments. One is a mini MBA, so a full 1 week program going through all the management competences required in an entrepreneurial company. And that one is together with Dragos Popescu from Diagma. It's a program that we run already for a long time, for more than 10 years, and we had thousands of alumni. Actually, if I put together all the graduates or alumni of my various courses and programs, starting with School for Startups, actually back in 2010 to 2011, which I co-organized with Doug Richard from the UK, which was also one of the Dragons from the UK, similar show with a Romanian one. And so putting them together, it's probably 2,500 to maybe 3,000 entrepreneurs that went through these courses. And I think it's something that modestly helped a bit many of these entrepreneurs to develop themselves, to understand a bit better things about entrepreneurship, and to create a better success foundation for their businesses.
Tell us a bit more about how the investments looked during the first years of Catalyst. What was your thesis back then? Can we talk about an ecosystem at that point, a startup ecosystem at that point in time, or how was it back then, and how have things evolved during these years?
Well, I would say that from where I stand, things evolved exponentially in the last decade. Just to think about that, little over 10 years ago, there was no venture capital fund in Romania. And now we have not only quite a few funds on various stages, which are Romanian born, let's say, but also we have a lot of interest and activity of regional funds and other types of venture capital funds in Romania. Conversely, 10 years ago, there was very much smaller ecosystem of startups and early stages, which could be investment ready, so to speak, because investment readiness is also an important thing in the whole process, because we could look at companies then, but they were simply not investment ready from a number of criteria that we need to check. Thirdly, as we started with Catalyst Romania Fund 1 as the first VC, one would say, okay, it should have been a walk in the park because you are the only ones and so on and so forth. It was not like that. Because the other thing that we noticed 10 years ago was that companies which were the most eligible for, or founders who were most eligible for venture capital investments did not want venture capital investments for a number of reasons. One, they said, okay, we are growing, we are happy like that. We don't want to, put the pedal to the metal necessarily. The other reason was that somebody told them that venture capitalists are bad, are mean. And I think with that, it was also a very good teamwork and combination of myself with colleagues from 3DS Capital, because they come from the financial consultancy world, whereas I come from actual entrepreneurship. So coming from the real thing, from entrepreneurship, helped me to relate with Romanian founders and to some extent to all of the founders in the more general region of the Balkans, because with a second fund we also invest in Serbia, Bulgaria and other markets, Western Balkans, in a different way, in a better way than normally a financial consultant or a fund manager would relate or would communicate with founders, because I always could put myself in their shoes and say, okay, Radu, Mircea, Adrian, I was there, I know how you feel and I understand how this works, so you don't have to worry that when we do the investment I will just ask for silly reporting and numbers, but you can hope that we will try to actually help your business more than with money, this concept of smart money. The other thing that was very important for us, and I think it should be important for any investor, even though this is one place where people are cutting corners left and right, and I don't think this is a good thing, is that in theory, no investment should happen just because we met the other week at a conference. You made a pitch, I liked it, and then I invest. To some extent, this is what Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, Lions Arena have mediatically promoted, and that's not good, because you need to have understanding between the parties. You need to have trust, and trust is something that you create over time. I can tell you from my own experience that our best investments were investments that we've done in companies where we knew the founders 2 years back, 3 years back. So it was a process of knowing each other and getting to that stage where we said, okay, we are ready now to do an investment. It was really like a partnership. Like a good example is Smart Bill, where the founders, great founders team, again, a 3-people founder team. This is why I promote this idea that co-founders and a team of preferably of 3 co-founders would be a great thing even for a technology company. So when we first met, they came to some of my programs, my courses, and we talked a lot, and I offered to give them advice. They were not in the stage where we could invest then, but it was probably 2.5, 3 years later when they were ready, and we said, okay, let's do the investment. And now they are, market leader with impressive growth over the past decade, I would say, very constantly, part of the Visma Group, which is the largest European wide company, technology company for cloud business processes, double-digit billion euros in valuation. So this kind of successful exits and transactions usually happen when the investment was done on these premises, or of knowing each other well, trusting each other, and understanding each other's operating model, business model. Because sometimes it's just seen unilaterally, like, okay, we need some money as a company, and then whoever offers that money will take them in. But in reality, it's like a marriage in a way. So basically, the two parties have not only the right but also the obligation to sort of due diligence on the other side. So obviously, the investor will always have some formal due diligence process, but sometimes the founders do not match that process in the sense of trying to see a bit, what have these people done before, who will be in my board of directors as a person, because that's the most important person that we will work with. And that's something that either creates trust or destroys confidence and trust in the medium and long term in cooperating as investors and entrepreneurs. So back in 10 years ago, again, small ecosystem, a lot of issues with trust between the two sides of the ecosystem, investors and entrepreneurs, lack of understanding of the process, of the standard clauses, conditions of an investment. And entrepreneurs would say, why would I have to give warranties to the investor? And it's like, it's an education process. You start telling them, okay, it's like selling a house or a part of a house. You build the house, so if there is any vice, any problem, that it's there in the basement or in the structure of the house, you need to warrant for it, because I cannot know, even if I do due diligence, I cannot know what's really in there, deep in there. And then they start understanding. So it's been a process where we've hopefully helped a bit with education, and also we've shown with the first fund, already the first fund is in the money. It's a successful fund. We've invested in 10 companies. We've done great exits, like Smart Build to Visma, Greenhorse Games to Tencent, one of the largest companies of the world, Vector Watch to Fitbit, who then in turn sold to Google. So we've done and we've showed this kind of progression and development and value creation for the companies where we invested. So with the second fund, it was, I would say, to some extent much easier. First fund was 15 million euros, 15. Second fund was 50 million, 50. So we grew more than threefold in terms of commitments. Same, EIF as cornerstone investor, but in the second fund already, this first fund, because it was a Jeremy fund, it was probably 70% EIF and only 30% private investors. In the second fund, we are probably, again, the first fund in Romania who has much more private commitments than EIF or public commitments, so to speak. The majority being private commitments. We are the only one, or the first fund in Romania who has a much larger geographical area to invest in, so we can invest outside Romania. We have already done a very promising investment in Serbia, in AdHunch, an advertising technology company based in Belgrade, but with activity in Western Europe and the US. And we already invested in 6 companies to date, very promising, very interesting companies, technology and tech-enabled companies. And we are getting ready for our 7th and the next investments. We should probably invest in 15, 16 companies altogether in the new fund. So things have moved a lot upwards. Not only for us as a team, we have increased the team and Catalyst in general and 3TS Capital here in the region, but also for the entire ecosystem, as I said. And this was in a very short period of time. If I compare it to Western Europe, or the US, where venture capital grew in 30, 40 years. Now here in Romania, in 10 years, we went from zero, not necessarily to hero, but but to something that is already a vibrant ecosystem where you can, for instance, in the investments that we've done in the first fund, in 10 companies, we have 20 business angel co-investors. So basically, we are also trying to mobilize this type of business angel ecosystem, because for a business angel, obviously it's a degree of comfort to be next to a venture capital, particularly a venture capital that has a good track record. And for us, it's also a good thing to have business angels next to us, because they are closer to the business. They might be from the same city or the same country, so it also helps that they're closer to the company, and they might be more vertically specialized than us in that particular area. So they also help with expertise in the advisory board or in the board of directors, as the case may be. Particularly since, as we are investing, and Romania is relatively fragmented, geographically speaking, to be close to companies in Timișoara and Cluj or in Iași, or in Sibiu or in Târgu, where we have invested outside of Bucharest, or to be in Belgrade or in Sofia. It's not so easy. So this kind of co-investments also help us a lot. And this is an ecosystem that is sort of creating a virtuous cycle. In our case, of course, there will be other funds and other teams following. In our case, for instance, what helped a lot was that obviously the founders, where we've done successful exits from the first fund, invested in our second fund, which is the normal cycle. At least a part of their money was invested in our second fund. So this also helps to increase the commitments for the fund, and also the possibility to not only to invest in new companies, early stage or startup companies, but also to use the expertise and also the vested interest of these more seasoned founders who already achieve success and have a lot more experience, to help the younger generation of entrepreneurs, because it's their direct interest. It's not just like giving back, which is a nice concept, but doesn't have an incentive, a financial incentive embedded. Whereas if these people, like Radu Georgescu, like Radu Hasan from SmartBill, like George Lemnaru from Greenhorse Games and others, these people are our investors in Fund 2. So whenever we invest in a company, they always offer to help, because they know it's also in their direct interest, financial interest, if those companies become a big success. So that's something, as I said, as a virtuous cycle, as a flywheel that goes higher and higher with the next generation of funds. And I have to confess that obviously, as we are almost 3 years into Fund 2, with Catalyst, we are planning already the next generation, Fund 3, which should be even a bigger fund, maybe even wider geographically speaking, but we are keeping the focus obviously on Romania. We're interested in Romania in particular, and probably it will take 2-3 years to go to the next generation fund, to Catalyst Romania Fund 3.
What are some characteristics of the Romanian startup ecosystem at this point? I mean, if you were to describe our startup ecosystem to someone from outside Romania, what would you say? What would you tell them about the startups here, the founders, the investments opportunities?
Well, I would say that we see, geographically speaking, we see in Romania a number of hubs that are very strong and getting stronger. Of course, there's this axis, Bucharest-Cluj, which is clear in Romania. And I think, obviously, Bucharest is really big and big in anything in Romania, but Cluj is a serious contender in terms of some of the entrepreneurial startup and early stage activities. And then we have eccentrically placed, let's say geographically, Timișoara and Iași, west and east, which are also growing very, very nicely. And for us, it was relatively easy to find pipeline targets, so companies that could be of interest for us in terms of investments in all of these hubs and more, because we have, let's call them tertiary cities like Sibiu or like Târgu, where we have also seen, and in some of these towns we have even invested. Smartville is from Târgu Mureș, from Sibiu. Smartville is from Târgu Mureș. So we have seen companies even in these towns or cities which are otherwise not big tech hubs, or other again generates a number of interesting startups every year. So it's an ecosystem that is growing not only numerically but also is growing in this multipolar approach. So it's not, and that's a good thing. It's not Bucharest. No, it's not only Bucharest. And in this sense, we look a bit like more and more like the Polish ecosystem, where you don't have only Warsaw, you also have Krakow, you have Wrocław, you have Poznan, you have Gdańsk. You have a number of cities, which all of them vibrate with IT startups and technology startups. As opposed to that, if you look at Bulgaria, if you look at Hungary, if you look at Serbia to some extent, there's just one city where things are happening, and the rest is not so much. And that's a good thing for Romania, because it creates a multipolar approach, which encourages even more startups to come into the play. And also it creates the opportunity for talent to be available, or to be incentivized to come into these accelerators, incubators, not only in the capital but also in other cities of Romania. I think this is part of the successful IT development of Romania. The other thing about the ecosystem is, of course, I would mention the strengths of Romania in terms of IT ecosystem. The IT infrastructure itself. Romania is one of the fastest internet countries in the world, and at times the number one country in Europe, two country in Europe in that respect, in terms of broadband internet, which is the IT highway. So we don't have a lot of highways, but we have this available and very, very fast IT highway, which is broadband internet, and that helps. All of these cities that I mentioned, which are developing into IT hubs, also have functional and connected airports, international airports, and that's also very helpful, because people want to travel in terms of IT companies sending people over, taking people from here to go to their clients or to their partners in foreign countries. So that's also important. Eventually, there is also this reality about Romania, which is that IT is so important in Romania, that and Romania is so proficient, is so efficient, so successful in IT, that Romania is today the second country in the European Union in terms of GDP percent generated by IT activities. And we are only surpassed by Ireland, which is sort of an artificial GDP generated by IT, because all the big tech from the US have their European headquarters in Ireland. So basically they registered all the European revenues in Ireland. So with that being said, it means that in reality, Romania is the most successful country in terms of IT. I hope that both the ecosystem and the government will continue to support that and to contribute to that, because it's really a very important national value, and it's we might not have the best country brand in terms of other things, but we might have, and we should have, the best brand of a country for IT as Romania. Additionally, in terms of the ecosystem, we have the investors. So basically, already, if we're talking about larger investors coming to Romania, they can always find co-investors here, like our fund, like Gapminder, Early Game Ventures, other funds that are already in the market, or they're preparing to go to the market as Romanian VC funds. And it's useful for outside investors, particularly larger investors, to have co-investors here in Romania, from the same reason that I mentioned before, that they want people that are closer to the target company, to the investee company. Moreover, I think that the level of understanding and interest in equity investments of Romanian entrepreneurs has increased significantly, and their understanding in terms of how to build a successful business has increased tremendously. So I think it's a very good time to be in this particular ecosystem in Romania. Of course, it could be and it could grow much bigger, but comparing to what we had, again, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, no VC fund, very few business angels. Now the ecosystem of business angel is actually getting ever stronger with multiple initiatives, Romanian-wide or regional ones like Tech Angels, like Grow Channel, like many initiatives which show that there is consistent potential that is being brought together in real investments by business angel groups and syndicates. And we work and we try to cooperate with all of them. A lot of events, even larger international events. We are also trying to contribute to some of these events and be part of the important events of Romania's venture capital and startup ecosystem. And overall, it's still a long way to go, but as I said, the growth and the development over the few years is quite impressive.
We mentioned the past, the present. Where do you think that we're heading? You've mentioned a few points.
Well,
but where do you think that we're heading? Again, for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, in terms of the present, we have to say that overall, global ecosystems are showing significant adjustments and corrections, like in terms of multiples, in terms of valuations, in terms of money that was invested. 2022 was a significant correction downwards. So we have to start by telling this not so nice reality about the ecosystem. Why this happened? Well, part of it is because of the clearly inflated expectations that the market, both entrepreneurs and investors, had just before the COVID and through the initial stage of COVID 2020, 2021, and then 2022 came as a serious correction. Of course, the global economies and inflation environment in the big markets is not helping, because by the time the Fed or the Central European Bank are raising the interest rates, of course there is less money going into the capital markets. It's a normal flow of the investments of the capital, and as less money goes there, of course we see corrections on the stock market downwards, and the basis of most of the valuations that the investors are making, even for startups, are coming from the public markets, where you can see immediate, let's say, value as perceived by the market. So with those benchmarks in mind, we are looking at some multiples that at one point, particularly in end of 2022 and beginning in 2023, did not correspond at all anymore with the expectations or the hopes of the entrepreneurs. So it created this gap, which was much bigger than the usual, because there will always be a gap between the perception, it's selling and buying, right? So every time, with notable exceptions, the entrepreneurs will think their business is valued more than what the investors would like to offer or would consider adequate to offer. There's always this gap, but I would say that like half a year ago, this gap became the biggest in recent years. And because it was so big, we haven't seen a lot of investments going on. But now the things are sort of starting to again converge, because the entrepreneurs on their side realize that they will still need investments in order to grow quicker. So they're lowering their expectations to some extent. And also the investors say, okay, we see that the markets are kind of stabilizing, so we can accept a bit higher valuation than what we had in mind, that maybe 6 months or a year ago, and the rest should come from the fact that the company will deliver the expected performance or above the expected performance. So I think that we are at a point of inflection where we might be seeing the market coming back in terms of number of deals, in terms of size of the deals, and in terms of the overall money that is put in the market. There is another inflection point that is expected probably next year or in the next couple of years, because as we all know, there is this resilience program in Romania and in other countries, but speaking specifically about the Romanian program, we're talking about dozens of funds that might be or should be financed through this program. A number of the fund managers already submitted applications. They are, progressing to some extent. Some of them have already gotten some initial approvals from EIF or from the government, and this is a good thing. The bad thing is that everything, in my opinion, is moving much, much slower than expected. So still we don't have any of these funds on the market, and we would welcome some of these funds on the market. And probably only 2024 we'll see some impact, some effect of these new funds, of this new fresh money coming into the market. Because in reality, particularly in programs like this resilience program of Romania, PNRR, it's not necessarily part of it. It's strategic in the sense that it's not necessarily about getting immediate returns. It's deploying capital, deploying money to the market with some more, as I said, strategic goals to it. This might be construed as a distortion in the normal market with private money coming in for reasons of generating just return, and that's it. But in reality, I think in Romania we still need a lot more risk capital, a lot more venture capital than what we have seen. And I'm looking at markets nearby, at Hungary, which is nowhere near the size of Romania today in terms of the ecosystem, in terms of the IT market, in terms of the potential, but it has, 10 times more investment funds, venture capital funds, a lot of them funded through government initiatives, a lot of them, putting more money in the market without a lot of success. So we see markets where there is a lot more capital being deployed, and in countries where the potential is smaller than Romania. So from that perspective, I think Romania could enjoy of significantly higher amount of venture capital, and in general of early stage equity being invested in the market. And this, one way or another, this moves the market forward. One thing that I believe remains very important for Romania is that we should not forget there is this pyramid of companies, and the basis of a pyramid is really the startups, those prototype companies, pre-revenue companies. Of course, we all know that this is a layer where from not many will achieve success. A lot of them will be lost on the way. A lot of them will fail. It's the rule of the pyramid in terms of early stage, later stage companies. The more they grow, the less risky they get. So basically on this layer, the problem is that if people put money just with return objectives in mind, it's very complicated to achieve some kind of returns. The risk is significant. So the only way to funnel to help this initial segment, this initial layer, is through also involving public funding in that. And we had the Jeremy and post-Jeremy programs as part of that, with the Accelerator and other initiatives which were for the pre-seed investments. And that's very good, because eventually, if you don't put money one way or another into 200, 300 companies, IT companies at the prototype or pre-revenue stage, it's very difficult to get to the stage where we have maybe 20 or 30, 1/10 of those getting to the level and the investment readiness for a larger seed round, a few million euros, or even a Series A round from a structured investors like us. We are doing large seed and small Series A. So this is something that is still, I would say, still the weakest link in our ecosystem, and we're trying to address that through various initiatives. Some of them are private, some of them are public. Even, to some extent, our investment in Seedlink was meant to help that kind of ecosystem to develop, because in Seedlink we can see early stage companies coming in and getting funded, provided they also convince business angels or seed investors to participate with a structured term sheet and valuation terms and conditions, so that the crowd investors can also come and participate and help fund more those early stage companies towards their future success.
This brings me to my last two questions. You mentioned success now, and you mentioned success when you were talking about some of the investments done through Catalyst. I want to ask you, looking back at your own investments as a business angel and also for Catalyst, do you have companies where you regret investing because they didn't perform as they told you or you expected them to perform? And do you feel that you've missed some opportunities for various reasons?
Yeah, I think the two questions come together. So on the one hand, of course, I might have missed a number of opportunities because to some extent I was here all along, and yet, for instance, I missed the investment in UiPath. But
why? Can you tell us why?
Yes, well, we had discussions with Daniel, and it looked like an excellent business case. But for us at the time, I was also very new to the whole VC industry, and for us at the time, it looked like from just checking or putting checks on the checklist for our investment criteria, it did not correspond at the time. So obviously, Early Bird and Credo doing the initial investment, then we said, okay, maybe we can participate in a later round, but they grew so nicely so quickly that the next round was so big that it was way too big for us. We are just a small Romanian centric fund. So the next one was, I think, Axel with tens of millions, and in that moment we would have liked to invest, but we weren't able to invest. So some reasons, some template or A4 sheet reasons not to invest in companies relate to the criteria that you set. Now, there's a big difference between an investment fund and a business angel, because for a business angel, you might set your criteria, but you can always waive or just neglect or ignore your own set criteria, because you're getting in love with a business and with an idea, and say, I want to invest in this one, and then you probably regret. As a fund manager, you do not have this privilege, this option of ignoring or waiving criteria, which is excellent in the sense that it really provides for a diligent approach of you as fund manager towards all the money that is not your money. I'm also an investor in my own fund, but of course, bulk of the investments is coming from LPs, from our limited partners, which are third-party investors. So I need to take care of their money. So if I didn't check the criteria and if I didn't respect the criteria, then I would do a poor job for them. Contrary to that, as I said, in some cases, by just checking the criteria and seeing that this one or that one is not matching and it's compulsory, then it means that we will not invest in a company where we could invest, and it might go big and successful. But it's, you know, it's the usual rule of the game that you will never miss an opportunity if you invest in everything, and that's impossible. So basically, if I said yes to everything that came my way, I would not have missed any opportunity. Even if you have a very thorough filter or selection criteria, you still, you know, make some investments that do not perform or do not generate the results that you're looking for. However, in all my experience as an entrepreneur, business angel investor, and venture capital investors, I never had issues of, you know, founders or companies where, you know, we had issues of integrity, of trust, of you know, working with a company. If things didn't go the way we planned, it was usually because, you know, of some, in many cases, some market conditions which were adverse. Like, for instance, my experience with Testarossa, where we just invested in the wrong time and the wrong place, and it was I could say a great learning experience, because you learn from your failures. It was a lot of money that I lost there, but eventually, when we saw that the business was not working, we just closed it, and we paid all the dues to you know, suppliers and to everybody, and we just said, okay, we call it quits, and we moved to the next business initiative. It was the wrong time because we invested just before the crisis in 2009, and so we thought that people will still pay for a small ticket like coffee, but they didn't. We also invested on the premise that we'll do this chain of coffee shops in shopping centers, in malls. And after 2009, again, people sort of took a step back from the malls, and we were left with no customers because we are not an anchor or destination for the customers. You were just, you know, they should have been there in the mall, but they weren't. And then we moved to a different direction, trying to find some high street locations. But that was, you know, by the time we did that, the crisis was over, and it would have been a better choice to stay in the mall. So basically, wrong time, wrong thing, wrong location, and to some extent also the fact that we have to admit that we don't know everything, and this was one type of business, you know, this kind of hospitality, restaurants, cafes, where you need a certain type of how should I say, lifestyle approach to be successful. This is not something that is investable in the sense of you can scale the business just by putting some money and then the business will grow, because it's a model business where you either have one location that is, you know, there's a family there, or there's a full owner there that is there all the time, or if you want to go for the franchise business, then it's a very complicated business with a lot more risk and usually with less returns than other types of businesses. And I learned that lesson, and I would not, you know, invest in something like that ever again. In terms of other businesses that I was involved in, again, sometimes the results were not there because of market adverse situations. Sometimes, indeed, we were just pursuing a business model that was not viable or not viable anymore, or the context of the market changed. But in many cases, in most of the cases, we succeeded to either to put back the company on a good trajectory and then make a successful exit, or at least to salvage the business in the sense of pivoting to something that maybe was smaller, maybe was not at the same scale, but at least was sustainable in terms of business viability. And to that avail, I'm sorry to say that I was never involved in bankruptcies or insolvencies, even though I was involved in many companies. And one would assume that of course at one point in time this is part of the business. Maybe it's just because I did not invest enough. So maybe if I I had taken more risks, I would have had some of the companies with more success than I had, and a few companies with bigger failures or bigger losses than I actually had.
And my very last question for you: what title would you give to a documentary about Romanian startups?
That's a difficult question, because normally this exercise, in my opinion, should be a brainstorming that would take some time. From the top of my mind, I guess, but that's taken already, Techsylvania. It's one of these international events, very nice international events that are taking place in Cluj every year. So something that would combine, technology with some deeper historical Romanian roots, if possible, or a title that would confirm or reconfirm this idea that Romania is the most productive, most proficient, most successful European country in terms of IT. Albeit, because we're talking about Romania's IT, albeit a lot of this IT is BPO, is outsourcing, and that's, it's not ideal, because it sort of mimics the Indian model rather than the Estonian or the whatever Polish model. But still, even BPOs, even IT outsourcing, IT services is clearly a source of prosperity and affluence, because we see all these, and nobody, or very little people, ask themselves why, Bucharest is too big for the impact, but Cluj, Iași, Timișoara were certainly heavily influenced by the IT success in those cities, and in those cities, 90% plus of the IT is BPO, is IT outsourcing and IT services. So it means high salaries, it means prosperity for the workers and their families, it means, a vibrant real estate market, because those people want to buy first, a studio, then a two-bedroom apartment, then they want to buy a small house, then a bigger house. So it really helps, real estate. It helps consumption in terms of retail, FMCG, clothing, electronics, everything. Everything comes together in terms of sort of the economic cycles, and we should be very attentive with those areas where IT is developing, because with IT development, if there is also a good, public policy maker, the city hall, the mayor, people there, the city manager, if they have a good vision and strategy related to this wealth generated a lot through IT jobs in the city, then this can continue.
Excellent.